Hi guys, are all the volcanic systems underneath the Reykjanes Peninsula connected, and is it one magma chamber that is spreading the magma everywhere and could cause it to come up everywhere? Something similar might be happening right now, and let's talk about this. And I want to talk about what Freystein Sigmundsson is saying. He's a geophysicist at the University of Iceland, because there has been a smaller earthquake at the Fagradalsfjall area. And we know Fagradalsfjall has erupted 3 times since 2021. And it was believed that Fagradalsfjall has its own volcanic system with its own magma chamber, and that the swartsengi area has its own magma chamber. But the way it behaves and the more eruptions we're seeing, the scientists are maybe coming to the conclusion, they're not 100% sure, that there might be one magma chamber that is feeding all these eruptions and all these areas. So what he says is that the earthquake at Fagradalsfjall might be an indication that magma is moving into this area again, so moving under Fagradalsfjall. So Fagradalsfjall is basically east of the Sutnuka crater series where we have seen the last eruption, and also east of Grindavik. If it erupts there, that's not too much of a problem. So what he is basically saying, that we see earthquakes there, that's a sign of magma moving into this area and a sign that the system there is recovering, meaning it's filling up again. But you know, that it could also be that there is a certain amount of magma trying to reach the surface. So if the surface is harder and not that brittle, it needs to push, right? And once the maximum elasticity of the crust is reached, then the magma can come up to the surface. He says that most of the scientists think that we will see the next eruption in the Sutnuka crater series again. So that's where we have seen the February eruption. So that is actually not a bad spot, right? It's not inside Grindavik. It's not at the doorstep of Grindavik. It's not inside Swartsengi. So in this area, you have to watch the lava flow. That's what they learned from the last eruption, because it did flow over the main road and destroying it. It did flow over the main water and heat supply for the southern Reykjanes Peninsula. And in the December eruption and the January eruption, it was hurting the road that leads into Grindavik and flying over the pipes, flowing, not flying. Flying would be even scarier. Flowing over the pipes there. So what the scientist says, they do expect it to erupt in the Sutnuka crater series again. But then he also says, but someday this will change. And one possibility that could cause that change is that the magma finds its way somewhere else. And that's why it is also possible that it could return to Fagradalsfjall, but also somewhere else. Inside Swartsengi, inside Grindavik, they have said there is a likelihood that this might happen. So he says you don't have to look far back into history, because he says, you know, the events that began in October last year, the magma was violently forcing its way towards and underneath Grindavik when it was forming that magma tunnel. And that was the greatest activity, right? And they have seen before, when the 3 eruptions were at Fagradalsfjall, that was a massive activity. But then all of a sudden it shifted from Fagradalsfjall to the Swartsengi area. And at the same time, and that's what he's saying, that is weird, the pressure has not decreased at Fagradalsfjall, and land has not subsided there despite the last 3 volcanic eruptions that we have basically seen in the last 2 months. So they think that the systems are interconnected. This is just a preliminary assumption, and they definitely have to collect more data, and it is very difficult to really know what is going on underneath. And that's why some of these eruptions come with little to no warning. So he's saying the earthquakes that have occurred recently in the Fagradalsfjall area, they are not over the existing 15-kilometer long magma tunnel that has formed on November 10th. So far we've also seen the earthquakes along that tunnel, so we knew something's flowing in there again, and then it was just a question of where will it come out first, right? So it could be, because now we see the earthquakes a little bit further west, and he says we think that when the magma finds a new channel to the surface, we will see obvious signs of earthquakes, because then it needs to dig a new tunnel. You have to compare it with mining. If you need to create a new mine shaft, you need explosive, you need to go at it very, very hard. And this is what the magma is doing. That's why it is rumbling on top. It's rumbling more if it's forming a new tunnel and if it's going into a new area, rather than in an area that already has all the tunnels, right? There it can flow in there and spread very easily. What he is saying, and that is what I find very, very interesting. So he says there are certain indications that these systems are interconnected, and that in this way volcanic eruptions in Fagradalsfjall can relieve the pressure a little bit underground in this area. And then also he says that the Reykjanes Peninsula as a whole is not big if you look at it in a larger context compared to the Earth, right? So what is one volcano and what are many volcanoes if you look at this? So he raises the question, is Iceland many volcanoes or is it one volcano? I mean, if you look at how tiny Iceland is compared to the surface of the Earth, you could make that count as one volcano that keep erupting at different areas, but compared as a whole, that area is not too large. So he says this is the question, but what they are noticing, there are indications of greater interconnections between the systems. So that is very interesting and needs to be looked at for the future. So with every eruption that keeps coming, maybe they will learn more. And what they're saying right now, the eruptions will keep coming basically once a month. What they have noticed since they looked at the last 3 eruptions, that the time frame between the eruptions shortened, so like to 3 weeks. So we will have to see. And in that context, the question was raised, why didn't the magma come to the surface on November 10th when the initial long magma tunnel was formed and we saw these many earthquakes, this horrendous earthquake swarm that rattled the town so that it was evacuated in the middle of the night, right? So the scientist says that the volume of magma that flowed from the magma chamber, that flowed out of the magma chamber that evening on November 10th towards and underneath Grindavik was 10 times greater than the volume of magma that has come up or come out in the volcanic eruptions that have occurred over the magma tunnel. So the last 3 eruptions. So much magma was pumped in there. But the magma failed to break through to the surface that day, because we have to consider the magma chamber's full and it needs to release, but at the same time, the pressure is sinking in the magma chamber. So it has lost a lot of magma, right? And since it was going such a long way, I guess there then was not enough pressure to let it come up. And we know that these large fissures, they have been there in Grindavik for a long time. All these cracks and fissures, many of them have already been there. They just had been covered up by, like, over time, moss growing over it, some earth falling over it, some grasses. So they have been covered up. And that's an interesting part, because some homeowners that, some of them especially that are not from Iceland, that bought homes in Grindavik, they said the government knew that in some areas where homes were built, that there are fissures underneath. So why did they give out building permits in the first place? So I think there might be some lawsuits in the works if residents are not receiving a payout that satisfies them in these areas. That's how it sounds to me, because if someone from out of country buys a home there and doesn't know about that history and relies on the government to hand out a permit and then finds out that there's a huge fissure underneath or going through the garden, we will have to see. I mean, I don't know. They will release more information about that bill that will buy out the homes. It's still not completely through. The residents could make comments until last Monday, and now they want to look all over it again. And they said they made some minor changes, but basically a lot of it is remaining the same. And that bill is only for residents of Grindavik, not for businesses yet, right? And so let's speak about that magma that was flowing in the tunnel on November 10th. That happened so fast. And what he also says, that there was space in the Earth's crust because of plate movements. So it's all interconnected. So we know that the North Atlantic Ridge is going underneath Iceland and basically goes right through the Reykjanes Peninsula. And what we're seeing there is two plates moving away from each other, basically creating like a rift. And that's why there was space for magma to come up, because the surface is broken, right? So it's a pull that is happening on the surface, and then pressure is being released. So he calls it a voltage release event. So that's why he says it just happened that all the magma could leave this area where magma was collection, and it has settled inside the Earth's crust in that corridor that was formed on November 10th, that long 15 miles or 15 kilometer long corridor. So he says this is not the only one. There are examples of magma tunnels like this that are even longer than 15 kilometer. And the closest example is perhaps the magma tunnel that has formed in 2014 in Bardabunga. That's another volcano that's like east of Grindavik. Bardabunga has seen some larger earthquakes recently too, in the 3-point-something range. So something might be in the works there as well. We have to wait and see. But there is a magma tunnel that was almost 50 kilometers long. But he says, what is so special about the magma tunnel that has formed underneath Grindavik? And that's the fact how quickly it has formed. So everything seems to be sped up there compared to other events that have happened in the past. And that, of course, makes it more dangerous. So he says it happened so fast, it breaks in the middle of this magma passage. And then magma is actually flowing horizontally to both the northeast and the southwest. So that tunnel was expanding in two directions. And, you know, it was a mix of many, many circumstances that made this happen so quickly. And, you know, they were just lucky that the magma at that time did remain under the surface and was not erupting at a length of 15 kilometers. So guys, I have to ask you again, since we're in the middle of the video, could you do me a favor? Leave this video a like, share it with your friends, and leave me a comment what you think so far. That would help my channel and to help the algorithm to push this video a little bit further out. Thanks for that, and back to the video. So this is something that is also interesting that I wanted to tell you in conclusion. Since Freystein Sigmundsson, that geophysicist, has talked about the possibility that all the systems, all these volcanic systems might be interconnected underneath the crust, he says we need to prepare for an underwater eruption. So he says that the scientists are prepared for the possibility of an eruption at Eldey. That's another volcano, volcanic systems, because GPS measurements have been indicating that something has started there. And of course, that since this system goes underwater as well, to do measurements of land rise at the bottom of the sea is more complicated. So they don't seem to have too many data. He says it's not impossible. And he says naturally this is just a volcanic system that continues out to the sea. And in reality, there is little difference between the areas on the Reykjanes Peninsula and those that are closest to land on the Reykjanes Ridge. So he says volcanic eruptions can and have occurred there, and we are preparing for it, that there could be an underwater eruption. So, you know, what he also says is if there is an underwater eruption and you know, the seismic activity that they have seen at Eldey in the recent days indicates that there are several powerful earthquakes that have occurred between like smaller earthquakes and larger earthquakes that really they could be really felt. So if there is an eruption in around Eldey, he says that this eruption could relieve the swartsengi system if they are really interconnected. So then the pressure, as I understand it, in the magma chamber underneath swartsengi could be relieved. But also so far, even if there was a relief, the magma chamber kept filling up again. So, but interesting, right? So it basically is a little bit of a lottery where it will erupt, where it will come up next. They are saying it's going to be in the Sutnuka crater series again, that this is most likely since everything is like, it has flown through there, the tunnel exists. But if it's all interconnected, there might be so many more underground tunnels, and it could flow from here to there to here to there and then come up who knows where. The only indication they have is basically the earthquakes and the GPS measurements if there is a land rise. But since everything is so fast, there is not much warning. So the only warning you have is if you see really a bundle of earthquakes, an earthquake swarm. So at the last eruption, it was about 40 minutes. Warning, but you know, you have to see there's always some earthquakes. So with every few earthquakes, you can't set off an alarm. So you really have to wait a few minutes to see, is this going to be a cluster event? And then you have to sound the alarm. So last eruption, 40 minutes from the start of the swarm till the eruption. So probably a little less than 40 minutes should have been the warning, but actually it wasn't, right? So I think there's room for improvement in the future, and I'll keep watching it as always, guys. So if you like this video, leave it a like, click the notification bell, but do not rely on the notification bell alone. Check out my YouTube start page on the Pulse with Silky on a regular basis, because I release a video every day. And if you don't get a notification and wonder, where is she? Because I've seen some comments of yours, where are you? Great to see you again. And then I said, well, I'm here every day. So check out the channel and subscribe to my buymeacoffee.com/silky website, because if there is a new eruption, I'll send you an email and notify you. I don't want to send you too many emails and spam you all the time, but if there's something very interesting, I'll send you an email. And I have a post section where I post interesting maps or some pictures of my animals and me, an update what we're doing, and that's totally for free. Of course, this is a site where you can support my channel as well. Buy me a coffee. And thanks for all the people who keep doing that. Your support means the world to me, and thank you for buying me the supers here on YouTube. You guys are absolutely awesome. I love you as an audience. Your comments are the best, so sweet and so nice. So to everyone who watches me in the morning, good morning, guys. Enjoy your coffee. My thoughts are with you. I just love to drink coffee, and I hope to see you very, very soon. And to Carl, the pictures, the AI pictures of the Icelandic rider, they're just awesome. And I want to show one here in the background. That's like a blonde Icelandic rider. I mean, I'm not Icelandic, but you know, watching over the blue lagoon to see what stunt they're pulling next. So I love that image. They're really, really great. So thank you for creating that image. And I thought I want to share it to you guys. You know, we just have to have a little humor once in a while. And you know, the world is serious enough, and there's so many tragedies. And I think it's important to always have some time for a smile. You know, a smile doesn't hurt anyone, and it doesn't do bad or change the amount of tragedy. But you know, it lightens up our souls. And I think that's badly needed these days when you see what's going on all over the world. So my heart goes out to you guys, and see you very, very soon. Bye.